And welcome to All Around Northwest Ohio. I'm Jim Funderburg. You know, most of us will take for granted some of the sounds that we hear every day when you pick up a kid's toy or you start to play a video game. I don't know how many of you have wondered where those came from, those sounds and those verses and that music, but one of the sources for those is a young man that we have right now with us, Barry Leitch. Barry, good to have you with us today, and thanks for having us over to your studio/home.
No problem. Good to have you here.
Talk to us a little bit. You know, I think anybody who has heard your voice here for the first time realizes that you're not a Northwest Ohioaner. Okay, where do you come from?
I'm from Scotland originally, a little town south of Glasgow.
And you have been doing these kind of things for a long, long time?
Yeah, it's about 25 years now. It's getting up there.
25 years. How did you end up in Northwest Ohio?
My wife's family's from here. She grew up in Bryan, and I was freelancing so I could live anywhere. We wanted to raise our kids here, and that was a good place.
Now, I don't think Bryan was the spot that you figured you would be in, though, when you first started with this thing, because you lived a couple more places other than Bryan, correct?
Oh, yeah. I used to live in Buffalo. I worked for Fisher-Price Toys.
Okay.
Before that was Atari in California. Before that was Boss Game Studios up in Seattle. They were a sub-studio of Boss Film Studios. They did special effects for a whole bunch of movies. Batman, Superman, you name it, they did a whole bunch of film stuff. Before that, Origin Systems down in Austin, Texas. They were owned by Electronic Arts. And before that, Ocean Software in Manchester in England. They were the biggest British company at the time, game company.
So how did you get started in something like this?
About the age of 14, 15, I decided that I wanted to write music for games. And at the time, there was only 2 or 3 people in the world who were making a full-time living out of doing music for games. So I started creating music on the computer. I was doing just cover versions of existing pieces of music, you know, rock Madonna tunes, rock tunes. I was just transcribing them onto the computer. And then I started writing my own music. And I started sending them to all the game companies. And like any obnoxious 16-year-old or 15, 16-year-old, I knew everything at the time, and I knew my music was great, so I was going to phone every company in Britain and told them so, and that they should use my music. And one of them eventually gave in and did. So there was no looking back from there. I'd got paid like $300 for my first piece of music that I sold when I was 16.
And at that age, that's a huge amount of money.
It was, but I had to give half of that money to my dad for the phone bill, because you have to pay for local calls in Britain.
Okay.
And the long distance was extremely expensive at the time as well, so half of that money ended up in my dad's pocket. So
were you a musician at a very young age? Did you play piano, guitars, those types of things?
Not really. I played recorder.
Okay.
And I could read music. I used to play, my grandmother had an organ, an electronic organ that we used to play. That wasn't any good. I never had any proper piano lessons or anything, but it was kind of fun to mess around with the electronic organ, because you could press a button and it would have all the backing instruments going and stuff.
Sure. So then basically you took that kind of technique and were playing video games at the time, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. And really into video games. And what sparked in your brain all of a sudden at one point in time that says, you know what, that would really be cool if I would do those types of things?
You know, at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life other than do video game music. That sounded cool.
Okay.
I got a job offer. I worked for Rolls-Royce for about 6 months when I was 16 as an apprentice engineer. I was given an apprenticeship with them, and I tried that, and it was awful. Standing, filing pieces of metal all day, every day. You know, It just wasn't fun.
Yeah. So something had to be fun.
Yeah. Fun, interesting, changing, different every day. And creative. God. Standing, filing pieces of metal just wasn't for me. 15,
16 years old, you're in high school at the time?
Well, I left school when I was 16 to go and work for Rolls-Royce.
Okay. So at 15 or 16, you said, school's not going to be for me.
Right. So after Rolls-Royce, there was a training scheme in Britain where if you were unemployed, you could, in order to hide the unemployment figures, they were taking all the unemployment teenagers and forcing them to go on these training courses.
Okay.
So they had a computing course. So I thought that'd be great. I'll go do that. Maybe get some, formal degree or something behind me. I would have a piece of paper that said I could do computers, other than just being able to do them. So I went on this course, and it was supposed to take you 2 years. But after 6 months, I'd kind of finished it. I'd done everything because I knew so much about computers to start with because I'd been playing with them since I was about 12.
Okay.
So after 6 months of that, the owner of the center, he was like, well, you need to go find something else to do because you've done everything here. Okay. So off I went in the big bad world, and after that I went to college to do a degree in computing. I thought I'll get a piece of paper again.
Sure. College where?
It was in Paisley, Stowe College in Paisley.
Okay.
And that lasted about 6 months because, well, the computers they had were years behind what we were using to make video games. I mean, me and my buddies were making video games in the evenings and weekends. That's what we were working on. And at school, during the day, we'd go to school and use these old antiquated computers. We had to write everything down on paper and then hand it to the teacher who would program it into the computer. And I'm like, oh, God, this is terrible.
And at your house,
yeah.
What were you using at your house? What were
we
machines that you guys had built yourself, put together?
Yeah, games for the Commodore 64 is what we were doing. We had multiple systems set up you'd use one to develop on another.
Is this something that as far as the computers and the games and all, that just came natural to you? I mean, you hear of people who can just sit down at a piano and start playing it, all right?
Yeah.
No background, nothing going on, but there's just an aptitude there. Same thing happened to you with the games?
It was more of a learning thing. We used to go to this computer club in Glasgow. It was at the YMCA in Glasgow, and all the kids from all around the city would all converge in this place on a Wednesday night, and we'd all bring our Commodore 64s with us and set them up, and everybody would be working on making, little demos, pieces of music, piece of artwork on the computer, and it was always a case of one-upmanship. You would go in one week and somebody had made this beautiful picture with a piece of music playing, so we'd go away and we'd make one that was better and come back the next week and show it to them, and they'd be like, well, that's better than ours. We had a bit of scrolling text on the bottom. So, we come back next week and they had the scrolling text with the music and the pictures and a spaceship flying around. So, that's just amazing. Constant one-upmanship. And that's what steered us into doing games. Because once you could do all those things, hell, you could make a game.
Sure. It became easy at that point in time. Yeah. Then it was just a matter of trying to find an in, huh?
Yeah.
And so that's when the phone bill came about. You started making phone call after phone call after phone call.
Exactly.
How did a guy at 16 years of age know where to go? I mean, know who to call?
Well, the first thing I did was phone the guys who were already doing it for a living. There was, like I said, 2 or 3 in Britain.
Okay.
And so I'd phone them regularly and pick their brains, ask them, find out how they were doing their stuff, and try and be respectful. I'm sure it was just an annoying teenager at the time, but
yeah. But they gave you the time.
Yeah.
Now that you've been doing this for a while, is that the way that this whole system works? I mean, do you have young Barrys out there that pick up the phone and say, Barry?
Occasionally I get the Facebook is where I tend to get it. There's a lot of young kids. There's a young kid out in Seattle who's just fascinated with stuff I did on the Super Nintendo like 20 years ago. And he's just full of questions about it. I'm like, dude, I don't remember half of these things you're asking questions about. He'll ask me about music for a certain game, and I'm like, did I do that? I don't remember if I even did the game anymore. It's so long ago, but try and answer your questions.
For the folks who are watching right now, when you get involved with the game now, you're the guy that puts the sounds and the voices on these different games and these different projects that are out there.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't get into the graphics per se, the blowing up and the explosions and all those types of things, but the big bang that goes off, the sound of the engine, okay, the person that is talking to you off of the game, that's your specialty.
Yeah, the whole audio for it. If someone needs voice, we need to decide what kind of voice do they want. Do they want a young person, old person, male, female, black, white, Asian? All those. There's so much detail in audio. It's hard to comprehend when you start thinking about it.
Do you have any audio background then? Did you do any sound for any bands for your buddies or anything like that? How did you get the audio down? How did you perfect your skills?
Well, over time, it's constantly been a learning process. When I worked at Atari, that was when I really had to learn how to mix properly. Because when you're playing an arcade game, it's so noisy in the arcade. You know, there's 20 other machines playing around you, all at full volume, and your listeners stand in front of the speakers. You can't have a nice quiet piece of music. I mean, everything has to be mixed so tightly. There's only like 6 dB between your loudest and quietest part of the music, so the player can always hear what's going on.
Sure.
So the first time I had to mix for an arcade game was a real nightmare.
So all of that skill and all those talents just basically were trial and error and work and practice and doing it and not being happy with it.
Exactly.
Tweaking it a little bit.
Learn the hard way.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Did you ever get that degree you started on?
No.
No?
I gave up on that. I discovered women when I was at the university as well, so we just tend to chase women. And by that point, there was a video game company in Portsmouth. They'd sent a guy up to Glasgow. He was looking for new talent for the company. Okay. And he decided they were going to open a Glasgow office, and he was going to interview one of her friends. So I was like, well, ask him if he wants an audio guy, if he needs an audio guy. And my buddy's there, ask him if he needs an artist as well. And so we all met with him, and he wanted to hire all of us, so we all ended up working for them.
Now, are these kind of the early days of Atari at this point in time, or how established was Atari at that time?
Well, it was 1986, 87. So that's the Commodore 64 was in full swing. The Commodore Amiga was just coming on the market. The Commodore Amiga wasn't so big over here, but it was huge in Europe.
Okay.
The PC was just in its infancy.
Yeah,
there's like pre-386 times.
Yeah, these are real. At the time, I can remember, you know, the Atari games being something that was awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
But compared to the computers that you're dealing with, I'm sure right now, these are Model Ts. These are Model T4s.
Yeah, well, the technology we have in toys now is more powerful than the technology we had in video game systems, 10, 20 years ago.
So you went from Atari to where?
Left Atari to go to Fisher-Price in Buffalo. That was moving from video games into toys.
Was that because all of a sudden the Atari world was coming to an end, or you just were intrigued by something else to do?
Bit of both, really. I mean, I could see that the writing was on the wall for Atari. The arcade market was dying, and that was primarily what we did. We did arcade machines like Gauntlet, Dark Legacy, Rush 2049. I mean, they even had one of those in Walmart up until recently. Okay,
right.
But so we could tell that Atari was starting to go down the tubes because the arcade market was dying, and they were owned by Midway, and they kept cancelling products that we were all working on. So it decided there was an opening at Fisher-Price, and they offered me the job, and I thought, what the hell, let's do something different.
And so when you moved to Fisher-Price, what were the types of projects you got involved with then?
I was there for 4 years, and I did most of the music for Pixter, which is a child's handheld electronic drawing toy. The Ocean Wonders Aquarium, that was huge. It was the very first child aquarium to put in cribs.
Yeah, and then they had all the noises and all the underwater sounds and all the bubbles and everything. Yeah, I remember that one. Sure, okay.
That was a huge sell. I think they sold like 4.5 million units of that. It's insane.
Yeah, that is. That really is.
The Beatles would kill to have those kind of sales figures.
They would, wouldn't they, huh? Now, from that side of the perspective, when a person does something like that, how do they pay you? $8 an hour or $1 a game, or how does this all work?
Pretty much $8 an hour. Maybe $8.50 on occasion.
That's, if you really hit the big time, it's 12.5. Yeah, something like that. That's amazing. So you were at Fisher-Price for 4 years?
Yeah.
And where'd you go from there?
Freelance.
Okay.
Doing it for anybody that wanted to sound as good as Fisher-Price.
You got to the point then, obviously, where you really didn't need a company behind you anymore. You had enough contacts and those types of things.
Yeah.
That you could go out on your own and do your own thing. Because right now you're in your house.
Yeah.
We're sitting right now on the second floor of your home.
Yep, it's a long commute in the mornings.
And this is where you work. This is where everything comes together nowadays.
Pretty much. This is where I'm stuck 17 hours a day in here slaving over a hot computer.
I think probably that's something that most people don't understand and can't appreciate. when you pick up an Atari game or a video game or a toy that has a voice to it, I don't know that anybody can imagine the time and the effort that goes into making whatever that sound might be.
Well, you've got to have a casting director to find the right voice. You've got to have a recording studio to record them in, an engineer who's monitoring the levels, a talent director to making sure that the talent isn't screwing up. It's a hard program, as simple as recording something as simple as voice. And
these people aren't in Bryan, Ohio. Where are they at?
Well, I work with a lot of people in different places. I have some great West Coast voice talent I work with. It's always fun. Lonnie Manella, she's done thousands and thousands of TV shows, cartoons, video games. She's one of the most prolific voice actresses of this decade, I think.
How has that changed over the time that you've been in this thing? Because when you were working at Atari and you first got started, it wasn't a situation, because I know nowadays you can get them all together via the internet and deal with one over the internet. Originally, when you did these things, would you travel then to California and sit down and work with these people in person?
Yeah, we'd have people come into the offices and record them there. I mean, Fisher Price had like a whole recording studio set up. In fact, we had 2 recording studios set up.
And you would bring the voice talent in then to do the voices, much like a movie that is being put together that people could understand. I mean, if Pixar right now is doing the new Toy Story, they have all different people come in and voice over their parts, and they mix them all together and put all the sound effects in. Same thing.
Exactly, yeah.
More of our conversation with Barry Leitch, and even hear some music custom made just for us, as All Around Northwest Ohio continues right after this.
Now, my understanding is you work with Ken Reeker at one point in time, too, because you were actually the star of one of these programs. Could you tell us a little bit about that one? That
was an unfortunate sequence of events. So I mentioned Lonnie Manella. She's a fantastic voice talent. She can do any voice in the world. But she works with several voice talent agencies. So whenever these agencies need someone, they usually contact her. And they were looking for someone with a Scottish accent. And so Scottish accent's a pretty hard accent to do.
Sure.
If you're not from there.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of bad Scottish accents on TV, that people try to do, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So Lonnie had hit me up for a favor. She said, "Hey, I need you to do a wee audition for this thing, because I'm having trouble finding someone to do a Scottish accent." So I'm like, all right, I'll do it as a favor, no biggie. Figured I'd just do the audition and that'd be the end of it. But did the audition and they cast me in the lead part for the video game.
And the video game was what?
It was Pirates of Voodoo Island.
And the pirates are still out there? Can people find these still?
I think you can go out and buy it. It was only released like last year.
Okay, all right. And your character's name?
Blue Belly.
Blue Belly.
Yeah. He's a little short, fat Scottish pirate.
That's phenomenal. And what's the theme to the game? What happens then when you're acting?
There was I think 3 or 4 main characters in the video game, and basically they have to solve this puzzle on Voodoo Island.
I might be able to hit the last fetish with that acid. That should burn off the feather so I can read it. Oh, I hope this lines up.
No, you'll break the fetish.
It's fine, look. The acid burned away the feather. Now we can read the 3rd name, but I can't quite make it out from here. A wee bit of blood in each fetish, repeat the demon's names, yo-ho-ho, and we're done. I bet I could push this log over and use it as a walkway. Prepare to board. I'm a genius.
So you're now immortalized.
Yeah, maybe.
Children and adults the world over will at least, whether they know who you are or not, be playing this game now for generations, more than likely, huh?
Well, I think most people have probably heard some of my stuff. They just don't know it. It's when I've done so many toys, it's inevitable that people get to hear your stuff.
Let's get into some of those right now.
Sure.
Because they're all right here at our fingertips. And I think this is probably the biggest change, I would have to believe, from the time that you started with Atari to where we are right now.
Oh, yeah.
Back at that point in time, I would think things were a little more difficult to do.
Yeah.
Right now, you sit here, point and click. Apple, I think I saw an iPhone sitting up here on your console.
Well, if we go back, 15, 20 years or so, I mean, the Commodore Amiga game would sound something like that.
And that music would really draw the younger generation. I can remember walking through, and that just kind of dragged you right there. That, along with generally girls in bikinis and or things going boom, whatever it might be, would drag you over to throw your quarters in that machine all the time, right? All right. That's a familiar sound.
This is the piece of music that plays in Gauntlet Dark Legacy, the arcade machine, when you finish the entire game.
Okay.
You've put about $50 of quarters into it at this point.
And at this time, the kid's just dancing around with the hands up there like, yeah, I did it. How would you come up with this music? When they came to you and said, we need something at the end, all right, that is the reward and the ultimate payoff there for that young person who's been standing there now with $50 worth of change in this
for about
machine.
6 hours,
Yeah, and been there for weeks and weeks and weeks working on this to get to this point. How do you come up with this? How do you come up with that music?
I just wanted to write something happy. I mean, the kid should be happy he's put in that amount of money and finally finished the game.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Triumphant piece of music. I mean,
Now,
reference other fanfares and stuff.
Yeah, all the way through the game, though, there are music pieces there. There are
Yeah.
different pieces of music there. So when they give you the idea for this, do they give you suggestions as to how they want this music to go, or is that all up to you?
It's usually up to me. They give me some suggestions. It's like when you go into the cemetery, it plays some cemetery music.
Okay, all right.
We have a wolf howling in the background, and the organ playing like a mausoleum.
Yeah. And you go so long, and then you get killed. Okay, and then it all starts over again, right?
And then you go into the ghost town, the spooky ghost train that goes past.
How long does something like this take you to put together?
Anywhere from a couple of hours to a couple of days.
Okay. And you're obviously on a timetable. I'm sure they sit there and say,
schedules and everything.
we have to have this done by next Thursday or whatever that date might be.
Exactly. There was one of the companies I worked for, Origin Systems in Texas. They understood the creative process very well. They're like, here's your office, here's your computer. This is the list of stuff we need you to get done, and this is when we need it done by. But other than that, if you want to come and go, you want to go see a movie at 11 o'clock in the morning, go see a movie. Want to go have lunch with your buddies, take 3 hours, that's fine.
Sure.
But if you don't have that stuff done by that date, you won't have a job.
Sure.
So,
A little pressure.
yeah, but everybody, I mean, the offices were empty most of the week, but on the evenings and weekends, they were full of people. There's always somebody sleeping on a couch. And,
It's amazing how that works, isn't it? Huh?
yeah, it worked really well because the creative output was fantastic. I mean, I've never worked with such a creative bunch of people.
My wife is an artist, and she's the same way, all right? She knows she has something due at a certain time. But that creative process is not just something you can just say, okay, I'm going to put in 4 hours this morning, all right, and 3 this afternoon, and I'll work 8 hours the next day, and 6 hours the next day. It all seems to come out of the ether, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's hard for me because being freelance and everything, I end up working most of the night. Working till 3 or 4 in the morning just because that's when it's nice and quiet. There's no interruptions. And
Sure.
that's when that creative spark will happen.
And I know you said that it's when we get into this world, and I know most of the folks watching right now are familiar with Ohio Art being here in Bryan. And I was told at one point in time they had a creative room, a department, that was on total lockdown all the time because toy manufacturers or gamers are very secretive about what they're bringing out, because obviously if they've got the next and the greatest and the biggest and the baddest, there's somebody looking over their shoulder and wanting to copy that and emulate that and steal that and get out to the market before they get there, right?
Exactly.
So anything that you're working on now is relatively a private issue, isn't it? It's something secretive.
Yeah, there's not an awful lot I can talk about with the stuff I'm working on.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff that I have finished.
Okay.
I recently did a soccer game for Facebook. It was a game called Soccer Tycoon. If you're on Facebook, everybody's on Facebook.
Yeah, right.
Just type in Soccer Tycoon and you'll find the game.
Okay.
So it was actually a Scottish company that contacted me. It was very strange, and they're just a startup company. They didn't have much money or anything. But I was like, hey, it's a soccer game, and it's a Scottish company. I mean, how easy could it be? The music literally wrote itself in about 2 hours.
Really?
It was amazing. I'd never written anything so quickly. It was a lot of fun, so I'll play it.
You have that one here?
Nope. Football match. Happy.
Yeah, sure. Now, I've been told that some of those Scottish football matches aren't real happy.
No, there's a big religious divide for the football teams.
But this just came to you 2 hours, done, over.
Real easy, wrote itself.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Keyboard obviously is right here. Mm-hmm. All right. This is where you basically, this is your temple. All right. This is where you put it all together.
Yep.
All right. And when somebody throws something at you, you've been doing it long enough now that it kind of comes naturally, comes relatively easy.
Dance, monkey boy, dance.
Well, that's what we're going to do to you.
Okay.
That's where we're heading right now, okay? Cool. So Ken and I really haven't really talked about this thing right now, but we're going to put together a new video for Mr. Reeker right now. I think most people know Kenny Reeker, all right? Mm-hmm. They call him Kenny Richer in a lot of places because he's got Richer Productions. So I think what we need to do is take a minute or two maybe and try to come up with something here for Richer Productions. How's that? Can we do that?
Let me come up with something.
Dynamite.
Want some crowds clapping? Sure. I'll go with that. Ken's epic theme. I'm gonna cheat and use a big drum loop.
There you go. There you go. That's him. In a matter of about 10 minutes, all right, I think you've captured the soundtrack of Kenny Richer's life, okay?
You think?
We have his theme. I love it. I'll tell you what, I really appreciate your time and your effort, and you're a wonderful talent and a wonderful guy to talk to.
Thank you.
And we're very lucky to have you in Northwest Ohio. I'm glad you decided to finally light here.
Thanks.
In our community. And the next time that I think anybody picks up a video game or goes online and plays a video game or goes into an arcade or picks up a little toy that talks to them for their kids and their grandkids, they're going to wonder, was this a Barry Leitch production or not, okay?
Go squeeze some toys in Walmart. That's always fun.
Wonderful. Well, we appreciate the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being on TV26 here today. And we thank everybody for watching here on All Around Northwest Ohio.